She came as a mail-order bride. The cowboy never expected her to change his life until one woman's eyes changed his destiny forever. The cowboy wanted solitude. The gunshot shattered the desert silence before Jake could even touch his holster. He dove behind the water trough. His splinters exploded from the wooden post where his head had been seconds ago. 3 riders burst from behind the abandoned mercantile, their horses kicking up dust clouds that painted the afternoon blood red. Jake's hand found his revolver, and he returned fire twice, dropping the first rider clean off his saddle. The other 2 split apart, circling like wolves. Jake had ridden into Dust Hill an hour ago, wanting nothing more than whiskey and silence. The town looked dead, which suited him fine. 5 years of running from the Garrison gang had taught him to prefer ghost towns over crowded saloons. But someone had been watching, waiting. Someone always was. He rolled left as bullets chewed into the dirt where he'd been crouching. His boots found purchase, and he sprinted toward the saloon's side alley. The second rider cut him off, revolver blazing. Jake felt the heat of a round pass his ear before he fired back, catching the man in the shoulder. The rider screamed and wheeled his horse away, leaving a trail of crimson droplets in the dust. The third rider was smarter. He had dismounted and taken cover behind a barrel near the livery stable. Jake pressed his back against the saloon wall, counting his remaining bullets. 4 shots left. Not enough if more were coming. They always sent more. A woman's voice cut through the gunfire like a knife through smoke. "Behind you?" Jake spun. She stood in the saloon doorway, red hair catching the sunlight like copper wire. Her green eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him forget the shooter behind the barrel. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. She was warning him. The third rider chose that moment to rush Jake's position. Jake dropped to one knee and fired, the bullet catching the man's center mass. The shooter stumbled backward, crashed into the barrel, and lay still. Silence reclaimed the street. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs as he scanned for more threats. Nothing moved except tumbleweeds and the dying man's horse, which trotted away nervously. The woman stepped fully into the street, and Jake noticed she held a rifle like someone who knew how to use it. Her dress was simple brown cotton, practical rather than pretty, though she was both. "You planning to shoot me too?" Jake kept his revolver ready. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." Her voice carried no threat, just fact. "I counted 6 more riders on the ridge when you came through. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Jake's gut tightened. "Why tell me? Because you're going to help me and I'm going to help you." She lowered the rifle but didn't set it down. "My name is Claire Dawson. My brother's being held in the mining camp 15 miles north. The same men who just tried to kill you." "I don't help people, I ride alone." "Then you'll die alone." Claire's green eyes didn't blink. "They know you're here now. They'll hunt you across 3 territories if they have to. But if you help me get my brother back, I know a way through the canyon that'll lose them forever." Jake heard distant hoofbeats. She wasn't lying about the riders. He had maybe 8 minutes now. "Why should I trust you?" Claire walked closer, close enough that he could see the determination burning in those green eyes. Something in them reminded him of his sister before the Garrison gang had killed her, before he'd become a ghost who haunted empty towns. "'Cause right now, cowboy, I'm the only chance you've got." The hoofbeats grew louder. Jake made his decision. "Where's your horse?" Claire's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Follow me." She turned and ran toward the back of the saloon. Jake holstered his revolver and followed, leaving 3 bodies and his solitude bleeding out in the dust of Dust Hill. He didn't know it yet, but those green eyes had just changed everything. The cowboy who wanted to be alone was about to discover that some destinies can't be outrun, only embraced. The riders hit the main street just as Jake and Claire disappeared into the maze of back alleys. Their shouts echoed off empty buildings, angry and hunting. But by then, 2 horses were already racing north, carrying a cowboy and a woman toward a mining camp where everything would change again. Jake glanced back once. Dust Hill was swallowed by distance and dust. When he looked forward, Claire was watching him with those impossible green eyes. "Don't slow down," she called over the thunder of hooves. "We've got a long ride, and I need to know if you can shoot as well as you run." Jake urged his horse faster. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't running away from something. He was running toward it. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like waking up. They rode hard through the desert afternoon as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. Claire led them off the main trail onto a narrow path that wound between massive red rock formations. The temperature dropped as they entered the shadows, and Jake's horse snorted nervously at the enclosed space. "How do you know they're holding your brother at the mining camp?" Jake called ahead. Claire didn't slow her pace. "Because I watched them take him 3 days ago. He was tracking silver deposits for a surveying company out of Carson City. Found something he wasn't supposed to find. What? Bodies. Claire's voice went flat. 12 of them buried in a played-out mine shaft. My brother recognized one of them as a federal marshal who'd gone missing 2 months back. Jake felt ice crawl up his spine. The Garrison gang. Claire pulled her horse to a stop so suddenly that Jake nearly collided with her. She turned in her saddle, those green eyes boring into him. You know them. It wasn't a question. Jake's hand instinctively moved toward his revolver, though he didn't draw. Old habits. Everyone in 3 territories knows them, he said carefully. No. Claire shook her head. You know them differently. The way they were shooting at you wasn't random. That was personal. Jake said nothing. His past was his own, and he'd killed men to keep it that way. Claire studied him for a long moment, then nodded as if he'd answered anyway. Good. That means you'll fight harder when we get there. My brother's name is Danny. He's 22 years old, and he's the only family I have left. I'm getting him out of that camp whether you help me or not. But with you, he might actually survive. She kicked her horse back into motion before Jake could respond. He followed, his mind racing faster than the hooves beneath him. The Garrison gang. Of course it was them. It was always them. 5 years ago, they'd rolled into his family's ranch looking for a place to hide stolen army payroll. When Jake's father had refused them shelter, they'd burned the ranch house with his parents inside. His sister Katie had tried to run. They'd shot her down like a dog in the yard. Jake had been in town buying supplies. By the time he'd ridden home, everything was ash and blood. He'd tracked the gang for 2 weeks before realizing they were too many and too vicious for one man to take down, so he'd done the next best thing. He'd started killing them one at a time whenever he found them alone or in small groups. Over 5 years, he'd reduced their numbers from 30 to maybe 15. But they remembered. They'd put a price on his head that had every bounty hunter from Texas to California hunting him. That's why he'd become a ghost. That's why he wanted solitude. Now he was riding toward the largest concentration of Garrison men he'd encountered in years, for a woman he'd just met. For her brother, a stranger. Katie's face flashed in his memory. 20 years old, with red hair like Claire's, green eyes full of life until they weren't. Maybe that's why he'd said yes. Maybe Claire's eyes reminded him too much of what he'd lost. Or maybe he was just tired of running. The rock formations opened up into a narrow valley as the sun touched the horizon. Claire raised her fist, signaling a stop. They dismounted in silence, leading their horses into a small grove of juniper trees. The camp's 2 miles north, Claire whispered. We wait until full dark, then we move in on foot. Tell me everything you know about the layout. Claire pulled a folded paper from her saddlebag and spread it on the ground. In the fading light, Jake could see it was a hand-drawn map, surprisingly detailed. There are 3 main buildings, the original mine office here, converted into their headquarters. 2 bunkhouses on either side. They've got maybe 20 men total, but half are usually out on runs. My brother's being held in the back room of the headquarters. I saw them drag him there. Guards? 2 at the main entrance. 1 walking patrol between the buildings. Probably more inside. Jake studied the map, his tactical mind already working through approaches. This draw here, on the west side. Does it provide cover all the way to the headquarters? Claire nodded. It's rocky and steep, but yes. That's how I got close enough to see inside. We go in there. Take out the walking patrol first. Quiet. Then the guards at the entrance. Fast and clean. And then we improvise. Jake met her eyes. Once shooting starts, everything goes wrong. You need to be ready for that. I'm ready for whatever it takes. The determination in her voice was absolute. Danny's all I have. Jake wanted to tell her that determination wasn't enough, that good people died even when they did everything right, that the Garrison gang specialized in making things go wrong, but he recognized the look in her eyes.
He'd worn the same one 5 years ago.
Check your rifle, he said instead. Make sure you've got plenty of ammunition. We move in 3 hours. They sat in silence as darkness claimed the valley. Jake cleaned his revolver by feel, a ritual he'd performed 1,000 times. Beside him, Claire did the same with her rifle, her movements efficient and practiced. She wasn't a typical rancher's daughter. She'd been preparing for this. Can I ask you something? Claire's voice was soft in the darkness. You can ask. Why'd you really agree to help me? You don't know me? You don't know, Danny. Men like you don't take risks for strangers. Jake was quiet for so long that he thought she might repeat the question. Finally, he spoke. 5 years ago, I had a sister. Red hair, Green eyes. She died because I wasn't there to protect her. He looked at Claire, barely able to make out her silhouette against the stars. Maybe I'm hoping this time turns out different. Claire didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry about your sister. Me too. What was her name? Katie. I'll make you a promise, cowboy. Claire's hand found his in the darkness, squeezed once, then let go. We get Danny out alive, and I'll make sure Katie didn't die for nothing. We'll take these men down, all of them. Jake felt something shift in his chest. For 5 years he'd been a lone wolf, striking and running, never staying to finish what he'd started. The idea of having an ally, of maybe ending this once and for all, was foreign and frightening and exhilarating all at once. That's a dangerous promise. I'm a dangerous woman. Jake found himself almost smiling. I'm starting to see that. The moon rose, a thin crescent that provided just enough light to navigate by. Jake checked his pocket watch. Time to move. They left the horses tied in the grove with nosebags to keep them quiet. Jake led the way, rifle in hand, moving low and fast across the desert scrub. Claire matched his pace easily, making less noise than he expected. She'd done this before, he realized, hunted something or someone. The draw appeared as a darker shadow against the landscape. They descended into it, using rocks and twisted trees for cover. The sound of voices drifted on the night air, men laughing and cursing around a campfire somewhere ahead. Jake raised his fist. Claire froze behind him. Through a gap in the rocks, he could see the mining camp spread out below them. Firelight flickered from the headquarters building. 2 silhouettes stood at the main entrance, exactly where Claire had said they'd be. A third figure moved between the bunkhouses, the walking patrol. He carried a rifle loosely, clearly not expecting trouble. Jake pointed to himself, then to the patrol. He pointed to Claire, then held up 2 fingers and indicated the guards. She shook her head and pointed to herself, then to the patrol. She wanted the moving target. Jake hesitated, then nodded. If she could handle it, he needed to trust her. They split up, Claire moving left along the draw while Jake worked his way right toward a position where he could cover the entrance guards. He lost sight of Claire in the shadows. For a heart-stopping moment, he questioned everything. What if she was leading him into a trap? What if there was no brother? What if those green eyes had been lying all along? Then he heard it. A soft thud, a brief scuffle, the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. The walking patrol had disappeared from view. Claire emerged from the shadows near the bunkhouse, dragging the unconscious guard into the darkness. She'd taken him down without a sound, without a shot. Jake revised his assessment of her upward considerably. Now it was his turn. He sighted on the first entrance guard, the one leaning against the wall smoking a cigarette. 50 yards. Easy shot, but he needed both of them down before either could raise an alarm. Claire appeared on the opposite side of the headquarters, her rifle aimed at the second guard. She looked toward Jake's position and raised 1 finger, then 2, then 3. They fired simultaneously. Both guards dropped without a sound. Jake was already moving, sprinting across the open ground toward the headquarters entrance. Claire reached it first, pressing herself against the wall beside the door. Voices drifted from inside. Multiple men. This was where everything could go wrong. Claire looked at him, a question in her eyes. Jake nodded. Now or never. She kicked the door open and went in low. Jake followed high, his revolver sweeping the room. 3 men sat around a table playing cards. They looked up in shock. Don't move, Jake commanded. 2 of them went for their guns anyway. Jake shot the first one through the shoulder. Claire put a bullet past the second one's ear so close it left a burn mark. The third man raised his hands, face pale. Where's the prisoner? Claire's voice was ice. Back room, the man stammered. But you can't. Shut up. Jake moved to the back door, tested the handle. Locked. Danny Dawson, you in there? A weak voice answered. Claire? Claire, is that you? Stand back from the door, Danny. Claire shot the lock off. The door swung open to reveal a small room with a single bunk. A young man with Claire's red hair and green eyes sat on the edge of the bunk, bruised but alive. His face transformed when he saw his sister. You came, he whispered. You actually came. Of course I came, you idiot. Claire's tough exterior cracked for just a moment. Can you walk? I can run. Good. Because that's what we're about to do. The man at the table chose that moment to make his move. He lunged for a rifle propped in the corner. Jake shot him in the leg and he went down screaming. That scream changed everything. Shouts erupted from the bunkhouses. Doors banged open. Men poured into the night, guns drawn. Go, go, go! Jake grabbed Danny's arm, hauling him toward the front entrance. Claire covered their rear, firing twice into the doorway as men tried to push through. They burst into the night air just as the first wave of gang members rounded the corner of the nearest bunkhouse. Jake counted 7, maybe 8. Too many for a fair fight. He didn't believe in fair fights anyway. Jake pushed Danny toward the draw. Run! Get to the horses and don't stop! Claire and Jake laid down, covering fire, forcing the gang members to dive for cover. They backed toward the draw, firing and moving, firing and moving. Bullets cracked past Jake's head. One tugged at his sleeve. Another kicked up dirt at his feet. They reached the draw just as return fire intensified. Jake tumbled down the rocky slope with Claire right behind him. Above them, muzzle flashes lit up the night like deadly fireflies. Keep going! Jake reloaded as he ran, his hands working on pure muscle memory. Danny was ahead of them, stumbling but moving. The draw twisted and turned, providing cover but also limiting their visibility. A figure appeared on the ridge above them. Jake fired without aiming and the figure disappeared. More shouts echoed through the night. They were organizing the pursuit. They burst out of the draw into the juniper grove. The horses were where they'd left them, nervous but intact. Danny reached them first and nearly collapsed against his mount. Get him up, Jake ordered Claire. I'll hold them off. Like hell. Claire shoved Danny onto his horse, then swung up onto her own. You die, I lose the best gun I've ever seen. Move your ass, cowboy. Jake couldn't argue with that logic. He mounted up just as the first pursuers emerged from the draw. He fired twice, driving them back into cover. Then they were riding, 3 horses thundering through the night, with death howling behind them. Danny was weak, but he could ride. Claire led them north, away from the camp, away from the main trail, towards somewhere Jake hoped was salvation. The pursuit lasted an hour. Gradually, the sound of following hooves faded behind them. Claire knew this territory, knew every draw and canyon. She led them through a narrow pass that opened into a hidden valley, then up a steep trail that only mountain goats should have been able to climb. At the top, she finally slowed. They dismounted in a small clearing surrounded by boulders. Danny slid from his horse and lay on the ground, breathing hard. Is he hurt? Jake asked. Bruised ribs, maybe a broken finger. Nothing fatal. Claire knelt beside her brother, checking him over with practiced hands. You're okay, Danny, we made it. You're insane, Danny gasped. Both of you. That was insane. Welcome to my life, Jake muttered. Claire looked up at him, and even in the darkness he could see her eyes shining. We did it.
We actually did it.
That's not the same as safe.
I know.
Claire stood, moved close to Jake.
But it's a start.
And you kept your word. Didn't really have a choice. You were very persuasive. I'm good at that. She smiled. A real smile this time, not the grim determination from before. For Katie. For Danny. For everything. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He'd spent 5 years avoiding connections, avoiding moments exactly like this one. But standing there in the moonlight, with this impossible woman and her brother, he felt something he hadn't felt since his family died. He felt like he belonged somewhere. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. We still have to figure out how to stay alive. Oh, I have plans for that. Claire's eyes gleamed with something dangerous and exciting. I told you I know a way through the canyon that'll lose them forever. What I didn't tell you is where that canyon leads. Where? Federal Marshal Station in Copper Ridge. 3 days' ride north. We bring them evidence of those bodies Danny found, bring them testimony about the Garrison gang, and we bring them the only man who's been successfully hunting that gang for 5 years. Jake felt his stomach drop. You want me to work with the law? I want you to help me destroy the Garrison gang once and for all, with the law on our side instead of hunting you. Claire stepped closer. You've been running for 5 years. Isn't it time to stand and fight? Really fight? End this? Danny pushed himself up on one elbow. She's right. I saw their operation. It's bigger than just robbery and murder. They're running guns to reservation raiders. They're trafficking stolen army weapons. The federal government will throw everything they have at them if they know where to look. And you know where to look, Claire added. You've been tracking them for years. You know their patterns, their hideouts, everything. Jake walked to the edge of the clearing, stared out at the vast darkness of the desert below. 5 years of running. 5 years of killing 1 or 2 at a time, never making a real dent. Katie's face haunted every decision, but maybe Claire was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to end this. He turned back to them. Claire watched him with those green eyes that had changed everything. Danny looked hopeful despite his injuries. Two people who were trusting him with their lives, with their future. 3 days to Copper Ridge, Jake said slowly. 3 days. The Garrison gang will be hunting us the whole way. Probably. We might not make it. We'll make it. Because I'm not losing another person I care about. Not you. Not Danny. Jake heard the unspoken truth in those words. Somewhere between Dust Hill and the mining camp, between the gunfire and the rescue, something had formed between them. Something that terrified him more than any gang ever could. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the things worth having were always terrifying. Okay, he said finally. 3 days to Copper Ridge. We ride at first light. Claire's smile could have lit up the entire desert. Danny let out a weak cheer, and Jake felt the first stirrings of something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. They made camp in the clearing, taking turns on watch through the night. When Jake's turn came, Claire sat with him for a while, neither of them speaking. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. As dawn painted the eastern sky pink and gold, they saddled up. 3 riders heading north, with the weight of destiny on their shoulders. The cowboy who wanted solitude was learning that some paths were meant to be walked together, and those green eyes promised that this path, however dangerous, would be worth every step. The Garrison gang was out there somewhere hunting them. Federal marshals waited 3 days north, salvation or perhaps a new kind of danger. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, full of threats and possibilities. But for the first time in 5 years, Jake wasn't just surviving. He was living, and that made all the difference. They rode into the sunrise, leaving the mining camp in the past behind. Ahead lay Copper Ridge, the federal marshals, and a reckoning that had been 5 years in the making. The cowboy's solitude was over. His destiny had arrived in the form of green eyes and red hair and a determination that matched his own. Now he just had to survive long enough to see it through. The first day of riding was hard but uneventful. They stayed off the main trails, following Claire's knowledge of hidden paths through the broken landscape. Danny's strength returned slowly, and by afternoon he was sitting straighter in his saddle. "Tell me about the evidence," Jake said as they watered the horses at a small spring. "What exactly did you see in that mine shaft?" Danny's face went pale at the memory. 12 bodies, some of them months old. All shot, most in the back. The federal marshal had his badge still pinned to his vest. I recognized him from wanted posters I'd seen. His name was Carl Henderson. He'd been investigating army weapon thefts. What else? Crates. At least 20 of them, marked with army stamps. I opened one before they caught me. It was full of repeating rifles, brand new, military issue.
Jake whistled low.
"That's enough to hang every one of them, if we can prove it," Claire said. "They'll have moved everything by now." "Maybe, but the bodies are still there." "That's evidence they can't be moved." Danny pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "And I have this?" "Survey notes. Coordinates. I mapped the whole thing before they grabbed me." Jake took the notebook, flipped through pages of neat handwriting and precise drawings. This kid was thorough. This could actually work. "It will work," Claire insisted. "We just have to stay alive long enough." As if summoned by her words, a gunshot cracked across the spring. Water exploded inches from Jake's hand. They dove for cover, dragging Danny with them as more shots rang out. Jake counted 3 shooters in the rocks above them. Not the main gang, just a tracking party, but 3 was enough to kill them if they weren't careful. "How'd they find us so fast?" Danny gasped. "They're good at tracking," Jake said grimly. "It's what keeps them alive." Claire's rifle barked twice, forcing one of the shooters back into cover. "We can't stay here. This position is death. The horses are gone already." "Look," Jake's heart sank. Their mounts had scattered at the first shot, disappearing into the desert. Without horses, they were on foot with 3 days of walking ahead and armed men hunting them. "New plan," Jake said. "We fight our way out. Claire, take Danny east toward that dry wash.
I'll draw their fire, then follow."
We split up, we die. We stay together, we all die. Go. Now." Claire grabbed Danny's arm and pulled him toward the wash. Jake laid down covering fire, emptying his revolver at the rocks above. He didn't expect to hit anything, just wanted them keeping their heads down. He reloaded on the run, following Claire and Danny toward the wash. Behind him, the shooters were shouting to each other, coordinating their pursuit. Jake dove into the wash just as bullets chewed into the bank where he'd been standing. The wash was deeper than it looked, carved by decades of flash floods. It twisted through the landscape like a snake, providing cover but also limiting their movement. They ran, stumbled, ran again. Danny was slowing down, his earlier exhaustion catching up to him. "I can't," he gasped. "Go without me." "Not happening," Claire snarled. She got under his arm, half carrying him. Jake covered their rear, firing occasionally to keep the pursuers cautious. The wash opened into a box canyon. Jake's stomach dropped when he saw the walls rising on 3 sides. "There." Claire pointed to a narrow crack in the left wall, barely wide enough for a person. "It goes through. I remember this place from when I was a kid." They squeezed through the crack one at a time. It was dark and claustrophobic, the rock walls pressing in from both sides. Jake went last, and he could hear the pursuers reaching the box canyon behind them. "They went through here," a voice shouted. Gunshots echoed through the crack, but the angle was too steep. The bullets ricocheted harmlessly off stone. They emerged on the other side into a landscape of massive boulders and twisted rock formations. "Keep moving," Jake urged. They had seconds at best before the shooters followed them through. Claire led them through the boulder field with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going.
Danny struggled but kept pace.
Jake brought up the rear, watching for pursuit. They climbed, descended, climbed again. The sun hammered down on them mercilessly. Jake's canteen was running low, and they'd lost their supplies with the horses. This was bad and getting worse. But they were still alive. That counted for something. They reached the top of a mesa and finally stopped to catch their breath. Below them, the boulder field stretched out like a maze. Jake couldn't see any sign of the shooters, but they were still out there. "How far to Copper Ridge?" he asked. 3 days on horseback, maybe 6 on foot if we push hard. Claire looked at Danny with concern. "Can you make it?" "I don't have a choice." "Actually," a new voice said from behind them, "none of you have a choice." They spun. 5 men stood among the rocks, guns drawn. Jake recognized the leader immediately. Frank Garrison himself, the man who'd killed his family. The man Jake had been hunting for 5 years. Frank was older than Jake remembered, grayer, but his eyes held the same cold calculation that had haunted Jake's nightmares. He smiled without warmth. "Jake Morton, heard you were dead. Wish I could say I'm disappointed to find out otherwise." Jake's hand hovered near his revolver. "Frank, you know, you've been quite the annoyance. 15 of my men dead over 5 years. That's bad for business." Frank's smile widened. "But now you've made it easy. Delivered yourself right to me. With witnesses, too. How considerate. Let them go. Your beef is with me. My beef is with anyone who crosses me." Frank nodded to Claire and Danny. "The girl who broke into my camp. The surveyor who found my mine. And the ghost who's been haunting me for half a decade. That's 3 problems solved in 1 day." "You won't get away with this," Danny said, trying to sound brave. "The federal marshals know about the bodies. About the weapons." Frank laughed. "The federal marshals don't know anything. And they won't, because you 3 won't be alive to tell them. Now, drop your weapons." "Slowly. I'd hate for this to get messy." Jake met Claire's eyes. She gave the smallest shake of her head.
She wasn't giving up. Neither was he.
Now Frank commanded, raising his revolver. What happened next was pure instinct and desperation. Jake drew and fired in one smooth motion, hitting the man closest to Frank. Claire's rifle barked, dropping another. Danny threw himself at a third man's legs, toppling him. Then everything was chaos and gunfire and screaming. Jake dove behind a boulder as bullets flew. He fired twice more, hitting something that yelped in pain. Claire was moving, shooting, moving again. She fought like a wildcat, never staying still. One of Frank's men rushed Jake's position. Jake waited until the last second, then stepped out and shot him point blank. The man fell backward off the mesa edge, his scream fading into the distance. 2 left besides Frank. Jake reloaded, his hands shaking from adrenaline. A bullet smashed into the rock above his head, showering him with splinters. Claire appeared beside him, breathing hard. "We can't win this. We have to. Then we do it together." She gripped his arm once, fierce and determined. "On 3, we rush them. Straight at Frank. Everything we've got." It was insane. It was suicide. It was their only chance. 1, Jake breathed. 2, Claire counted. 3. They burst from cover, running straight at Frank Garrison with guns blazing. The remaining gang members fired back, but panic made them sloppy. One went down to Jake's revolver. The other took Claire's rifle round through the chest. That left only Frank. He He stood calmly, almost bemused, as Jake and Claire closed the distance. At the last moment, he raised his gun and fired. The bullet caught Claire in the shoulder, spinning her around. She fell hard. Jake roared with rage and fired his last bullet. It caught Frank in the side, staggering him. But the man stayed on his feet, grinning through the pain. "Just like your sister?" Frank gasped. "She screamed too when I shot her." Something snapped inside Jake. He threw his empty revolver aside and charged, tackling Frank around the waist. They went down in a tangle of fists and fury. Jake was younger and faster, but Frank fought dirty. He got a thumb near Jake's eye, tried to gouge it out. Jake twisted away, brought his elbow down on Frank's throat. The older man gagged and loosened his grip. Jake punched him once, twice, 3 times. Frank's face turned into a bloody mask. "This is for Katie," Jake snarled. "For my parents. For everyone you ever hurt." He raised his fist for the final blow. "Jake," Claire's voice stopped him. "Jake, don't." He looked up. She dragged herself over, blood streaming from her shoulder. But her eyes were clear and focused. "Don't become him," she said quietly.
Don't let him turn you into a killer.
"I already am a killer." "No. You're a survivor who did what he had to do. But this?" She nodded at Frank's unconscious form. "This is murder, and you're better than that." Jake wanted to argue. 5 years of hate demanded that he finish this, but looking into Claire's green eyes, he saw something that made him hesitate. He saw faith. She believed he was better than his worst impulses. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to be better. He let his fist drop. "We take him to the marshals. Let them hang him." "Good choice," a new voice said. They looked up to see Danny standing over them, holding a rifle he'd picked up from one of the fallen gang members. He looked shaky but determined. "Because I really didn't want to shoot you if you killed him," Danny continued. "But Claire's right. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." Jake laughed, the sound half hysterical with relief and exhaustion. "When did you two get so wise?" "When we met a stubborn cowboy who needed saving," Claire said. She winced as she tried to move. "Speaking of which, I could use some help here. This shoulder's killing me." Jake tore strips from his shirt to bandage her wound. The bullet had gone clean through, which was lucky. She'd live. They'd all live, somehow. They tied Frank Garrison up with his own belt and rope from the dead men's supplies. Jake found canteens and what was left of their provisions. Not much, but enough to get them to Copper Ridge if they rationed carefully. As sunset painted the mesa in shades of gold and crimson, they started walking north. Jake supported Claire while Danny kept watch over their prisoner. Frank Garrison was conscious but silent, his eyes burning with hatred. 6 days on foot, Claire said quietly, with one of us injured and a prisoner to guard. "Think we'll make it?" Jake looked at her, at those green eyes that had changed his destiny. "With you? I think we can make anything." She smiled despite the pain. "Smooth talker. I have my moments." They walked into the gathering darkness, 3 survivors and 1 prisoner, carrying the weight of justice on their shoulders. The stars came out one by one, cold and distant and beautiful. Somewhere ahead lay Copper Ridge and the federal marshals. Behind them lay the mining camp, the bodies, the evidence that would end the Garrison gang forever. The cowboy who had wanted solitude had found something better. He'd found purpose. He'd found allies. He'd found, in those green eyes, a reason to stop running and start living. The journey was far from over. But for the first time in 5 years, Jake believed they might actually reach the end of it alive, and that was enough to keep walking. The next day tested them harder than any gunfight. The sun rose fierce and unforgiving, turning the desert into a furnace. Claire's wound was worse than she'd let on. By noon, she was feverish and struggling to walk. Jake carried her when she couldn't continue, his own strength fading with each step. Danny led them, with Frank stumbling along on a rope like a dog. The young surveyor had transformed over the past days. The fear was gone, replaced by grim determination. He navigated by the sun and stars, using his surveying knowledge to keep them on course for Copper Ridge. "Tell me about Copper Ridge," Jake said during their midday rest. They'd found shade under an overhang, but the heat was suffocating. "What do we do when we get there?" "There's a federal marshal post near the copper mines," Danny explained. "Marshal name's Patrick Cole. He's been trying to track the Garrison gang for years. If anyone will believe us, it's him. And if he doesn't, then we show him my notes. We tell him where the bodies are. We give him Frank Garrison gift-wrapped. Danny looked at their prisoner with undisguised hatred. That should be enough. Frank laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. You think Cole doesn't know about me? Half the lawmen in 3 territories are on my payroll. You walk into Copper Ridge, you're walking into your graves. Shut up, Claire managed from where she lay against the rock. Jake, don't listen to him. But Jake was listening. Frank's words had the ring of truth to them. The Garrison gang had operated with impunity for years. Someone had to be protecting them. How many lawmen? Jake asked softly. Frank grinned, showing bloody teeth. Enough that you'll never see trial. Cole might be clean, might not.
But the deputies around him?
They're mine. You show up with me in chains, they'll kill you before you get through the door. Then we don't go through the door, Claire said. Decided dead, she pushed herself up, her face pale but her eyes clear. We go around him. Send word to Cole directly. Meet him outside town where his deputies can't interfere. Danny asked. Telegraph office. Every mining town has one. We send Cole a message saying we have evidence about the Garrison gang. We give him coordinates for a meeting place. Neutral ground. Jake thought it through. It could work. If Cole was honest, he'd come. If he was dirty, at least they'd know before walking into a trap. We need to reach a town with a telegraph, he said. How far? Silver Point. Maybe a day's walk northeast. Small place, mostly abandoned when the silver played out, but they kept the telegraph line running for the remaining miners. Can you make it, Jake? Asked Claire. I can make anything if it means seeing Frank hang. They rested another hour, then started walking again. Northeast toward Silver Point, toward hope and danger in equal measure. The sun tracked across the sky like a burning eye, watching their desperate march. Frank stumbled deliberately, trying to slow them down. Jake jerked the rope hard, making him stumble for real. Keep walking. You're dead men. Dead woman, dead boy. Frank's voice was sing-song mocking. My people are hunting you. They'll find us. And when they do, Jake spun and backhanded him hard enough to split his lip. When they do, they'll find their leader beaten and bound, break their spirit faster than anything. So keep talking, Frank. Every word makes it worse for you. Frank spat blood but fell silent after that. They walked through the afternoon and into twilight. Claire's fever was getting worse. She shivered despite the heat, mumbling sometimes in delirium. Jake's concern grew with each mile. She needed real medical attention, not just field bandages and prayer. There, Danny pointed ahead. Silver Point. It wasn't much to look at. A dozen buildings clustered around what had once been a mining operation. Most were dark and abandoned, but lights showed in 3 buildings, including one that still bore a faded sign reading Telegraph Office. Wait here, Jake told Danny and Claire, pulled Frank along on the rope. You're coming with me. Insurance. This is stupid, Frank muttered. There could be anyone in that town. Then we'll find out together. They approached the telegraph office cautiously. Jake kept his revolver hidden but ready. He pushed through the door, dragging Frank behind him. An old man looked up from behind the counter, eyes widening at the sight of them. Jake could read his life story in those eyes. A telegrapher who'd stayed when everyone else left, probably because he had nowhere else to go. Evening, Jake said calmly. Need to send a message to Marshal Patrick Cole in Copper Ridge. The old man looked at Frank, at the rope, at Jake's gun. His wrinkled face split into a huge grin. Well, I'll be damned. That's Frank Garrison. He started laughing. You actually caught the bastard. Been hoping someone would for years. Relief flooded through Jake. You know him? Everyone knows him. And everyone knows what he's done. The old man picked up his telegraph key. What do you want to say to Cole? Jake composed the message carefully. Have evidence of Garrison gang murders. Have Frank Garrison himself. Meeting at Red Rock Spring 10 miles north of Copper Ridge noon tomorrow. Come alone. Jake Morton. The telegrapher tapped it out, the clicking filling the small office. When he finished, he looked up at Jake with newfound respect. Morton, you're the ghost who's been hunting them. News travels. Not fast enough. Garrison gang hit a homestead near here 2 months back. Killed a family. Left their bodies for the crows. The old man's eyes hardened. You bring Cole the evidence he needs. You make sure every one of them hangs. That's the plan. The response came faster than Jake expected. The telegraph key clattered to life. The old man transcribed, We'll be there. Bringing federal backup. Hold position. Cole. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had a chance. A real chance. You can stay in the old boarding house tonight, the telegrapher offered. No charge. Consider it my contribution to justice. They gathered Claire and Danny and made their way to the boarding house. It was dusty and cobwebbed, but the beds were solid and there was a well in back. Jake got water boiling to clean Claire's wound properly while Danny stood guard over Frank. "Let me see," Jake said gently, helping Claire sit up. The wound was inflamed and angry-looking. Jake washed it as best he could, applied fresh bandages torn from clean sheets he'd found. Claire bit her lip against the pain but didn't cry out. "You're tougher than nails," Jake said admirably. "Runs in the family." She managed a weak smile. "We still alive?" "For now. Cole's coming tomorrow at noon. We meet him at Red Rock Spring, 10 miles north of Copper Ridge. Can I make 10 miles? You're going to try. And I'm going to help you." Jake took her hand, squeezed it gently. "We're so close, Claire." "One more day." "One more day," she repeated. "Then this ends." "Then this ends," Jake agreed. They slept in shifts, Jake and Danny taking turns watching Frank and the approaches to town. The night passed without incident, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were balanced on a knife's edge. So close to safety, but still so far. Dawn came cold and clear. Jake roused everyone before first light. They needed to reach Red Rock Spring ahead of Cole, set up a defensive position in case Frank had been right about corrupt deputies. Claire was worse. The fever had her shaking, barely conscious. Jake carried her on his back while Danny led Frank on the rope. They looked like refugees from a war, beaten and bloody but still moving forward. The 10 miles took 4 hours. Jake's legs screamed in protest. His back ached, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when they were this close. Red Rock Spring appeared at mid-morning, exactly where Danny's navigating had promised. It was a natural formation, water bubbling from between red stones into a small pool. Rocky outcroppings provided cover on 3 sides. Jake laid Claire in the shade and gave her water. She drank weakly, her eyes glazed with fever. "Stay with me," he urged. "Just a few more hours." "Not planning on going anywhere," she whispered. "You're stuck with me, Cowboy." "Good." They waited. Jake positioned Danny with a rifle in the rocks above. He kept Frank tied to a boulder, gagged to prevent him from shouting warnings. Then he settled in to watch the approaches. Noon came and went. No sign of Cole. Jake's worry grew. Had something gone wrong? Had Frank's prediction about corrupt deputies come true? Then he saw the dust. Riders approaching from the south. Jake counted 4 men, all wearing badges that caught the sunlight. The lead rider was tall and gray-haired, sitting his horse like he'd been born in the saddle. Marshal Patrick Cole had arrived. Jake stepped out into the open, hands visible but near his gun. Cole rode forward alone, leaving his deputies behind. "Jake Morton," Cole called out. "You've led us quite a chase over the years." "Wasn't trying to be found, I know." Cole dismounted, approached on foot. Up close, Jake could see the honesty in his weathered face. This was a man who believed in the law, not one who'd been bought. "But I'm glad you reached out. The Garrison gang has been a cancer in these territories for too long. I have Frank Garrison himself, and evidence of 12 murders, army weapon theft, and more." Cole's eyes widened. "Show me." Jake led him to where Frank sat bound and gagged. The marshal's expression hardened when he saw the gang leader. "Frank Garrison. Finally." Cole looked at Jake with new respect. "How'd you take him?" "Wasn't easy. And I didn't do it alone." Jake gestured to where Claire lay in the shade. She broke her brother out of Garrison's mining camp. Her brother found the evidence. Bodies buried in an old mine shaft. Army weapons crates. "Where?" Danny climbed down from his position, handed Cole his notebook. The marshal read through it carefully, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is solid evidence. Coordinates, descriptions, even sketches. If the bodies are where you say they are, this will be enough to hang the entire gang." "They're there," Danny said firmly. "I saw them with my own eyes." Cole nodded. "Then we end this." Today, he signaled his deputies forward. They were real lawmen, Jake could tell. Not corrupt, not bought. Cole had chosen carefully who to bring. "We ride for the mining camp immediately," Cole announced. "We secure the evidence, arrest anyone still there, and we bring the full weight of federal law down on what's left of the Garrison gang." "What about them?" One of the deputies pointed at Jake. "Morton's a hero." Cole cut him off sharply. "He's been fighting the Garrison gang longer than any of us. What he's done in the name of justice. Any man who has a problem with that can deal with me." The deputy backed down. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. After 5 years of running, someone in authority finally understood. Can you ride? Cole asked him.
I can.
But she can't. Jake looked at Claire. She needs a doctor. Soon. We'll get her to Copper Ridge. My wife's a trained nurse. She'll take good care of her. Cole's expression softened. You did good work here, Morton. All of you. This woman and her brother, they're as much heroes as you are. Jake knelt beside Claire. Her eyes opened, focused on him with effort. We did it, he told her softly. It's over. We won. Told you, she whispered. Told you we'd make it. You were right. About everything. Jake took her hand. Those green eyes of yours, they changed my destiny. Good. Because you changed mine too. She squeezed his hand weakly. Don't you dare disappear on me, cowboy. When I'm healed up, we've got a life to build. Jake found himself smiling. Really smiling. For the first time in 5 years. I'm not going anywhere. One of Cole's deputies brought horses forward. They lifted Claire carefully onto one, secured her so she wouldn't fall. Danny mounted up beside her, ready to support her if needed. Jake climbed onto another horse, feeling strange to be riding with lawmen instead of running from them. Frank Garrison was thrown roughly onto the last horse, still bound and gagged. His eyes burned with impotent rage as he was led away like the criminal he was. They rode south toward Copper Ridge, a procession of justice and hope. The sun climbed toward afternoon, warm but no longer punishing. The desert that had been an enemy for so long suddenly seemed beautiful, full of possibility. What'll you do after? Cole asked Jake as they rode. After the trials? After the gang's finished? Jake looked ahead to where Claire rode, her red hair bright in the sunlight even as she slumped with fever and exhaustion. I think I'll stop running, he said. Find a place to settle. Maybe help people who need it. He smiled slightly. Turns out solitude isn't all it's cracked up to be. Cole laughed. No, it's not. The good things in life, you can't do them alone. They reached Copper Ridge by evening. True to Cole's word, his wife took charge of Claire immediately, bustling her into their home with promises of proper medical care. Danny followed, reluctant to leave his sister's side. Jake started to follow, but Cole stopped him. You've been running for 5 years, the marshal said. That ends now. I'm making it official. You're deputized. You'll help me take down the rest of the Garrison gang, and when it's done, all charges against you are dropped. Clean slate. Jake looked at the badge Cole held out. It felt strange to even consider wearing one, but maybe that was the point. Maybe he needed to become something different than the ghost he'd been. He took the badge. Let's finish this. The next week was a whirlwind of action. They rode to the mining camp and found it exactly as Danny had described. The bodies, the weapons, all the evidence they needed. Cole's deputies rounded up the remaining gang members, most of whom gave up without a fight once they saw their leader in chains. Jake rode with them on every raid, using his knowledge of the gang's operations to track down their hideouts and safe houses. Within 10 days, they'd captured or killed every member of the Garrison gang. The reign of terror that had plagued 3 territories for over a decade was finally over. Through it all, Jake checked on Claire daily. She improved slowly, the fever breaking after 3 days. By the end of the week, she was sitting up in bed arguing with the marshal's wife about when she could get back on a horse. You need rest, Jake told her during one visit.
I need to help finish this, she countered. It's my fight too. It's finished.
Cole's got them all. They're going to trial next month. Every single one of them. Claire's eyes filled with tears. It's really over? It's really over. Jake sat on the edge of her bed, took her hand. What you did, breaking Danny out, helping me take down Frank, all of it. You saved more than just your brother. You saved me. You were already saving yourself. I just gave you a reason to stop running. Same thing. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Claire spoke again. So what happens now? With us? Jake had been thinking about that question for days. The answer scared him, but it also felt right. I was thinking maybe I'd stick around Copper Ridge for a while. Cole offered me a permanent deputy position. Good pay, honest work, chance to help people instead of just hunting bad ones. That sounds good. Claire's eyes sparkled. But I'd need a reason to stay. Someone who makes staying better than leaving. Someone like me? Exactly like you. Claire pulled him closer, kissed him gently. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. I've got a homestead 2 days north of here, she said when they broke apart. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Danny's going back to surveying, but I could use a partner. Someone to help run the place. Someone who's good with a gun, but better with his heart. Jake felt his chest tighten with emotion. A homestead. After 5 years of having nothing but revenge and solitude, the idea of building something permanent was almost overwhelming. I'm not easy to live with, he warned. I have nightmares. Bad days.
Memories that don't fade. So do I.
We'll work through them together. Claire's green eyes held his. What do you say, cowboy? Ready to stop running and start living? Jake thought of Katie, of his family, of the 5 years he'd spent as a ghost. They'd want him to be happy. They'd want him to find a new family, a new purpose. Yeah, he said softly. I'm ready. The trial took place in early March. Frank Garrison and his remaining gang members faced a federal judge who showed no mercy. The evidence was overwhelming. Danny's notes, the recovered bodies, the stolen weapons, testimony from Jake and dozens of victims. Frank was sentenced to hang. So were 6 of his top lieutenants. The rest got long prison terms in the territorial prison. Justice, finally, after so many years. Jake stood in the courtroom and felt a weight lift from his soul. Katie could rest now. His parents could rest. All the victims could rest. After the sentencing, Jake found Claire and Danny waiting outside the courthouse. Claire looked healthy again. Her color returned. The wound healed to a pink scar on her shoulder. She smiled when she saw him. It's done, she said. It's done, Jake agreed. Danny stuck out his hand and Jake shook it firmly. Thank you, the young surveyor said, for everything, for saving my life. For saving Claire's. For ending this. Thank you for giving me a reason to. Jake pulled him into a brief hug. Take care of yourself out there. Survey work can be dangerous. I'll be careful, and I'll visit the homestead regularly. Someone needs to make sure my sister isn't working you too hard. They laughed, and it felt good. It felt normal. After so long living in darkness, stepping into the light was strange and wonderful. Marshal Cole approached with a paper in his hand. Your pardon, he said, handing it to Jake, signed by the territorial governor himself. Jake Morton is officially a free man. No warrants, no charges. Clean slate, just like I promised. Jake took the paper with shaking hands. Freedom. Actual legal freedom. There's something else, Cole continued. The governor wants to make you territorial marshal. You'd have jurisdiction across all 3 territories. It's a big job, but after what you've done... No, Jake interrupted gently. Thank you, truly. But I'm done with that life. I've got a homestead to help run and a future to build. Cole smiled, understanding in his eyes. Can't say I blame you. If you change your mind, the offer stands. They shook hands and Jake turned to Claire. She was watching him with those green eyes that had changed everything. Ready to go home? He asked. I've been ready since the day I met you. They rode out of Copper Ridge 2 days later, heading north toward Claire's homestead. Danny had gone back to his surveying company, promising to visit soon. Marshal Cole and his wife waved goodbye from their porch. The town that had once been just another stop became a place of hope and new beginnings. The ride took 2 days of easy traveling. They talked about everything and nothing. Plans for the homestead, memories of their families, dreams for the future. Jake told Claire about Katie, about the happy times before the tragedy. Claire told him about growing up with Danny, about losing their parents to cholera, about fighting to keep their homestead when everyone said a woman couldn't do it alone. You were never alone, Jake said. You had Danny, and now I have you. Yeah, now you have me. The homestead appeared on the afternoon of the 2nd day. It wasn't large, but it was well maintained. A sturdy house, a barn, a corral, fields ready for planting, a stream running through the property. It looked like everything Jake had lost 5 years ago. It looked like home. They dismounted, and Claire led him inside. The house was clean and organized, filled with touches that spoke of Claire's determination to make a life here. Books on shelves, curtains on windows, a kitchen that smelled faintly of bread. What do you think? Claire asked nervously. Jake turned to her, this incredible woman who'd refused to let him die alone in the dust, who'd dragged him back into life whether he wanted it or not. I think those green eyes of yours knew exactly what they were doing when they found me in Dust Hill. Claire laughed, the sound bright and free. They did. They saw a cowboy who needed saving. They saw more than that. They saw what I'd forgotten, that life's worth living, that solitude's just another word for giving up, that some fights are worth fighting and some people are worth fighting for. He pulled her close, kissed her deeply. When they broke apart, Claire's eyes were bright with tears. Welcome home, cowboy. Jake looked around at the homestead, at the life waiting to be built, at the woman who'd given him a reason to stop running. 5 years ago, he'd been destroyed by the Garrison gang. Now, with their leader headed for the gallows and their organization shattered, he was finally free to heal. Home, he repeated softly. I like the sound of that. They stood on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The wind whispered through the grass. The stream murmured its endless song. The cowboy who'd wanted solitude had found something infinitely better. He'd found purpose, justice, and love. Those green eyes had seen through his loneliness to the man beneath, and in seeing him, had saved him. Some destinies you chase, some chase you, and some arrive unexpected in the form of a woman with red hair and green eyes who refuses to let you face the darkness alone. Jake Morton had been running for 5 years. Now finally he was standing still. And standing still, he discovered, was exactly where he needed to be. The Garrison gang was finished. His family could rest. Katie's memory was honored not with more death, but with new life. And Claire Dawson, the woman who'd changed everything, stood beside him, ready to build that life together. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and hope. There would be challenges, certainly. Hard winters and difficult seasons. Memories that hurt and wounds that took time to heal. But they'd face those challenges together, and that made all the difference. As the stars came out one by one, Jake wrapped his arm around Claire's shoulders. She leaned into him, solid and warm and real. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not letting me die alone, for showing me there's more to life than revenge. For those eyes that changed my destiny. Claire turned to face him, her green eyes reflecting the starlight. You changed your own destiny, cowboy. I just reminded you that you could. They kissed under the vast desert sky, two survivors who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to walk into the light together. The past was finally past, the present was full of promise, and the future belonged to them. The cowboy had wanted solitude. Instead, he'd found salvation, and that, he discovered, was infinitely better than anything he could have imagined. The end of running was just the beginning of living, and Jake Morton was ready to live at last.